There's a light in the sky, rising in the air. There's a feeling so strong. It's time to light the fire, like a bright shining light. Learn, getting more out of life. Love, sharing time with friends, feeling so strong.
Hello, welcome to the House of Wellness. I'm Luke Darcy and I'm here in our weekly mini health bubble, I describe it as, with Joe Stanley. Welcome, Joe.
Oh, Darcy, it's lovely to be here. It's a really beautiful way of putting it as well, because we're, of course, still in lockdown in Melbourne. Restrictions have not exactly eased, but loosened a tiny bit, which is great. It's great to see that much of the country is opening up more and more as well. We'll get there, I'm sure, in time. We hope. We do.
At some stage, Joe, no doubt about it. And to end restriction here in Melbourne remains some way off. But spring does make our time outdoors a little bit more enjoyable. In fact, a bit of sun shining, getting out is such a healthy thing to do.
Absolutely. And September is all about popping on your favourite lippy to support Liptember by raising funds and awareness for women's mental health. And a leading cardiologist will deliver the facts on what it means when your heart skips a beat or two or more.
Well, I had the great privilege this week of speaking with British Formula One legend Sir Jackie Stewart, who's now in his 80s, Joe. He took out the Formula One championship 3 times in the late 60s and early 70s, and he's considered one of the greatest drivers in the history of the sport.
Now the champion driver is taking on a new race, this time to find a cure for dementia, which affects a staggering 50 million people worldwide.
Yeah, including Sir Jackie's wife of 67 years, Helen, and I spoke to the racing legend about his very personal race to find a cure. Sir Jackie, what a great honour it is to meet you. Thanks for your time.
Well, very nice to be speaking to you in Australia. From my point of view, it's been a great ride all the way through. It wasn't my first sport. I was in trap shooting, or Olympic trap. It was shooting for Scotland and then Great Britain before I was a racing driver. So I had been in another sport, but this one is considerably more glamorous, more colourful, more exciting. And of course, more people follow it because so many people drive cars.
And Jackie, I wanted to speak to you about the other passion in your life, the race against dementia. Can you tell us how this has come about to be something that you've put so much of your skill and heart and expertise behind?
It's a painful experience for any family to have someone who's suddenly identified as having dementia. As of the present time, there is no cure. There is no preventive medicine, which is even worse. And that's been going on for close to 40 years now. And I think I look at the rest of the world and see how everything else has changed and progressed, and yet dementia certainly hasn't moved at all. I mean, my wife, Helen, who I've been married to for 67 years or something, and she got identified at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, about 5.5 years ago. And I really didn't know what dementia was in those days. I mean, I knew it had something to do with the brain, but it was something that, and this is true for a great many people until the bad news comes, and then they find there is no cure. So it's an illness that progresses very coldly and poorly for the person involved and for the families, because it's a big challenge, because there's a big change in everybody's life when dementia comes along. So yeah, I'm very committed to try to find a cure for dementia and of course preventive medicine. The industry simply hasn't done well by it. No country has done well by it so far. And when you think that 1 in 3 people born today will have dementia, and there is no cure, 1 in 3 people. Now that's a terrible statistic. People have to be looked after when they have dementia. You know, I'm very lucky. The sport's been generous to me financially. My wife, Helen has 7 neuro nurses caring for her, not every day, 2 at a time, 24 hours a day. Now, that costs a huge amount of money. Now, fortunately, I can afford that, but few people can.
I read that you married her, you said, for her razor-sharp mind. What's it been like having someone so close to you live with dementia? Can you share that with us?
Well, I mean, she was sharp. She was working in a bank. I was a garage mechanic. I left school at 14 years of age. I had no education at all because I'm a severe dyslexic.
Wow.
So I can't read or write correctly. I've got somebody here working this for the internet. Helen was close to me in my entire career. And to see somebody get dementia of this kind, knowing that there is no cure, is a very painful thing for a whole family. It affects a whole family. It's not just a question of the husband, it's the children. And we've got 2 boys and they try to look after their mother as much as they can. And we've got grandchildren. But it really is a negative effect. We've got to find a cure for it. And that's why Australia's become involved with Race Against Dementia. You're one of our main players now. And we've got 2 young PhDs going to work in Australia. They'll be communicating regularly through the internet now. That's the great system that we have with the other PhDs that we've got, because this is not something that's only European or American or Australasian. You know, it's global.
Do you have any understanding, Jackie, of what causes it? Is there any science as to how it happens?
No, and that's the problem. And that's why we want to, as quickly as possible, find young, dynamic people, boys and girls, men and women, who have got an ambition to do something that would be a major player in the world. And we are using Formula One, for example, to look towards high technology being transferred over to another arena. And Formula One, we have better problem solving, faster problem solving than any other business or activity that I know of in the world. There's a Grand Prix that took place just yesterday, and there'll be another Grand Prix in 10 days' time, and there'll be at least 6 major changes in all of those teams. They'll be working 24 hours a day, but it's a huge commitment, but it's successful. We can see some light at the end of the tunnel by doing it a different way. Why have they not found a cure? I mean, people go to the moon. Nobody ever thought anybody would go to the moon. It's been achieved. Now they're talking about going to Mars.
I love the idea you spoke about of a PhD scientist sitting down with a McLaren or a Red Bull engineer, 2 incredibly intelligent people. What sort of collaboration are you seeing and hearing from those encounters?
Well, we take our PhDs to the factories and let them see what's happening. Everything's immaculate, even cleaner than a laboratory. It's attention to detail. It's covering every element. And that's what Formula One does. And we've got to have more people, more young, dynamic people, because the current generation, however clever some of those professors are, they've failed. And there's no doubt that this is a more complicated piece of kit than anything else in the world.
Jackie's global charity is called Race Against Dementia, and interesting to hear him talk about the alignment with the precision of Formula One and the medical world, Joe. His aim is, of course, to build a team of young scientists to find a cure for this debilitating condition. And with those stats, Joe, 1 in 3 people suffering from dementia. Amazing. We're heading for a massive hit on the healthcare system that will have far-reaching consequences, Joe. So you'd hope to see more government support in the race to find a cure.
Jackie's foundation has raised more than $3.5 million to fund groundbreaking research. You can head to their website to find out more.
You're watching The House of Wellness. Joe, have you ever had the feeling that someone is staring at you when you look up and look away straight away just after you've locked eyes with them?
Yeah, that is a very strange feeling. It's a little disconcerting, and I always hope, particularly if it's a stranger, that they've looked up at exactly the same time. you know, and then we both look away at the same time. I don't want to think that they've been just looking at me. That would be very odd.
Well, it makes you think about other things we do that are either just random or maybe catching. Like yawning, for example. It's one of those things that humans do, but we don't exactly know why, Jo.
It is a very strange reflex behaviour, but geez, it feels good, doesn't it? When you give yourself a big old yawn, it's just a reset, for me anyway. To uncover the science behind why we do it, here's the man with the answers, Dr. Nick Carr.
Oh, sorry, I was just pandiculating. That's the word for yawning and stretching at the same time. Pandiculation, isn't that wonderful? And yawning, it's another one of these things that humans do, and we don't really know why. There are several theories. One of them is that when we're tired, we underbreathe, and that yawning is a way of getting more oxygen into the blood. Oh, that makes sense. But we also know that when we're tired, our brains tend to warm up a bit, and research has shown that yawning actually cools the brain. So, there are theories about why we yawn, but we don't really know. All we do know is that human beings yawn throughout their lives. I mean, we've all seen little babies yawning. Don't they look cute? But did you know that ultrasound scans have shown that babies in the womb also yawn? What is that about? What are they doing? Say, oh, Mum, I'm bored. Get me out of here. Let's get on with life. Who knows? But it's not just humans that yawn. Animals yawn too. And animals yawn for other reasons. They yawn as a threat display. So primates with big teeth will yawn as a sign that they're going to attack. Guinea pigs also yawn as a threat display. I can't think of anything much more terrifying than being confronted by a yawning guinea pig. Your dog, on the other hand, will yawn because they're stressed, or because they're tired, or because you yawn. Yes, yawning is contagious. When you yawn, your dog is more likely to yawn. Isn't that just fantastic? In fact, yawning is so contagious, you're probably doing it now.
Interesting about dogs and primates mimicking humans when they yawn. And did you know, Jo, that elephants do the same thing as well?
I did not know that, Das, but now I'm a very interesting guest at a dinner party.
Well, it's very recent info out of New Mexico, Jo, where elephants in captivity were seen yawning if their handlers were yawning too, which they think might be because of the close relationships the elephants have with their handlers.
Oh, it's such a beautiful thing to know, and it makes sense because elephants are such intelligent and social animals and very family-focused. Which brings me to Liptember. Did you like that segue?
It was a very good one. From elephants to lipstick.
Liptember. Well, look, Liptember is all about caring and connecting, hence the family connection. But this time in support of women's mental health. All you have to do is wear your favourite lippy throughout September, and let's face it, you always feel better with some lippy on. You should try it, Das. So why not wear it for a good cause? You can register online and get your family, friends and co-workers to sponsor you. And let's hope your actions are just as contagious as yawning, and lots more people get on board too. To take part, just head to the Liptember website.
If you're like me and your go-to lip shade is a nude colour, we spend half our lifetime trying to find the perfect nude shade. And as a makeup artist, it's the most asked question I get. What is the perfect nude shade? Nude by Nature have brought out 100% natural lip collection, where they have nailed the nudes. They have over 10 different shades, so I'm going to start today with Nude by Nature's Satin Liquid Lipstick. It's a really beautiful shade. It is rich plum. So first, I like to apply it to the back of my hand. And as you can see, it's so beautifully moisturising. It's got the almond oil and the shea butter. In terms of a lot of satin lipsticks, they tend to dry out your lips. So the fact that it's got the almond oil is a big winner. So I'm going to apply it with my finger and just dab it in. And what we're going for more is a lip stain on our lips. And if I do ever have a bit of excess on my fingers, I'm not scared to tie it in to my cheeks. There's no rules in makeup, and that's one thing I swear by. On the top of that, I'm going to use Coral Blush, and then with the brush, applying to the centre, because I really want the centre of my lips to be lighter as well. What I love about this is it's so fun to play around with different lip shades to find that perfect lip shade that suits you. The older we get, our lips tend to disappear, the colour tends to go, so it's really important to bring that colour back in through your lips. The great thing with Nude by Nature is it's natural and it's vegan, so I don't feel as bad if I'm applying a lot on. And now, a way I love to finish it, which not a lot of people would do, is I actually apply the liner last because it gives a bit of a fuller lip. Get that cupid's bow. And there you have it. In 3 really easy steps, I've achieved my favourite nude lip.
It's often the way, isn't it? The simple ideas are the ones that get overlooked sometimes, Jo.
Absolutely. And the same can apply to giving up smoking. While there's lots of ideas out there to help, it's a case of finding the right one for you. The top reason for most people wanting to quit, would you believe, isn't about health, it's about money. 58% of smokers have ditched it because it's too expensive. So, I mean, do whatever works, really. One of the best ways to keep your ticker beating strong and boost your immunity is by loading up with fresh fruit and nuts. Luke Hines is all about the power of plants, and this week he's going bananas with GQ.
Gerald, I got to say, smoothie bowls are so much more than just for taking photos on Instagram. And while they do look the goods, then they're pretty easy to make. They're packed with some fantastic health benefits, including the one that I'm going to whip up here today.
I'll try and resist taking too many photos, Luke, but what makes this one so healthy?
Well, first off, I've made sure it's got a good balance between well-sourced fats, good proteins and smart carbs. But I've also included almonds. While almonds are packed with a variety of nutrients, they actually help increase the levels of beneficial bacteria in the gut.
And Heinzie, beneficial bacteria have some mighty big abilities. 3 things. They're important for everyday health and well-being. They support healthy intestinal flora. And then thirdly, they actually help support a healthy immune function.
And look, while speaking of all things healthy, I've got to give my healthy smoothie bowl a bit of a blitz. Look, in GQ, even though winter is behind us, it's important that we do support a healthy immune system all year round. Look, and obviously celebrating fermented foods is a fantastic way to increase beneficial bacteria. Is there anything else we can do?
Using a probiotic supplement can help. Now, some probiotics may work to help maintain intestinal beneficial bacteria and support a healthy immune system.
GQ, your knowledge looks after us as well as our beneficial bacteria looks after our bodies. And I am looking after our taste buds. Well, my taste buds on this occasion. Check this out.
It looks magnificent, Heinzie, and certainly worth an Instagram photo.
Well, make sure you give me a double tap.
Tap, tap.
The A to Z of Vitamins is brought to you by LifeSpace. We can all be living innovation.
Welcome back, Jo. We're talking about the involuntary action of yawning a bit earlier on. One of the other vital unconscious functions is our heartbeat.
A healthy heart should beat steadily at 60 to 100 beats per minute, but for more than 500,000 Aussies, that's not the case. They have an irregular heartbeat called atrial fibrillation, or AF, where the heart's rhythm is irregular.
And this week is AF Awareness Week, which is all about a free national screening campaign called Feel the Beat. And I spoke to leading cardiologist Dr. Emily Cotchett about the ins and outs of AF. Just in simple terms, what is atrial fibrillation?
Well, atrial fibrillation, we abbreviate to AF because it's a mouthful. It's when the heart is irregular and often chaotic, so it causes symptoms for patients such as palpitations or irregular beats. But more importantly, when it's irregular, there's a risk of stroke, and that's the biggest thing that we worry about medically. It's something we can prevent with medication.
And do we know what causes it?
Fibrillation's got lots of different causes, all the bad lifestyle habits such as being overweight or high blood pressure, smoking, but it's also associated with age, so it's very common as you get older. It's more likely when you have other medical problems, even across the whole body, such as arthritis or bowel issues. It also occurs in young people, so that's what we're seeing more often, and that might be under 40-year-olds who just have a random irregular heartbeat with no other heart disease.
And is it an inherited condition?
That can be when it occurs in younger people, and so that's something we're learning more about in terms of being inherited or genetic in origin.
And so, Emily, what are some of the symptoms to look out for?
So the first symptom is an awareness of your heartbeat when it's irregular or like butterflies, that you should report to your doctor to have assessment for it. The second one might be just if you're feeling your pulse and you find it's just flat or not quite that bounding regular pulse.
And so most of us probably are familiar with that idea of having an irregular heartbeat maybe, but how would that differ from AF? How would you know?
So palpitation is obviously common, like when you're stressed or anxious, you can feel a little increase in your heart rate. That can be normal. Fibrillation tends to be a bit more prolonged, so minutes or 10 minutes, half an hour of irregular beat that's ongoing, and you kind of get the sense there's something not quite right. But some patients have various other symptoms, so it can be mild, just breathlessness, it's hard to breathe, or I can't walk as far as I was going. So sometimes the symptoms are very subtle. So during this time of COVID, when everyone's stuck at home and reluctant to go to medical care, I suppose if something's changed and you're not feeling quite right, seeing the doctor can often work this out. If it's an easy thing to pick up, measuring the pulse or doing an ECG.
I had a couple of teammates, Emily, who suffered, I remember the term Wolff-Parkinson White syndrome. It's not a name you forget easily. Is that a form of AF? Is that?
Wolff-Parkinson White, or WPW, is one little spot in the heart that causes a racing circuit, very easy to fix. Some of those patients can have AF as well. They cause a similar symptom with rapid palpitations, so they're distantly related. But the procedure you have to fix WPW, which is through the groin and quite a straightforward procedure, is something similar we can do for patients with AF, and that's been our greatest change in the last, say, 10 years, to be able to ablate or burn parts in the heart that this fires off and improve symptoms for people, particularly if you're young and working and this is a problematic medical issue.
And most people, once you treat them, Emily, go on and have normal, healthy lives, do they?
So two things we think about with AF. The first one's the stroke risk, and it's really once you're past 65 years old, there's an increased risk of stroke, so we give blood thinners. In younger people, that risk is very small. The second thing is controlling the symptoms. So we use medication so you have less symptoms or it's less bothersome. When you're 30 and have AF, you don't want to take medication for life. That's where ablation procedures are useful to reduce your burden of AF or symptoms.
Yeah, great to hear that's the case. Is it something that you could imagine ever finding a cure for, or is it always going to be a management issue?
The cure would be avoiding the unhealthy lifestyles to begin with. If we take it right back to school-age children and activities we're doing there and their healthy habits. And I think the current generation are learning that with their environment-based teaching, that they'll be more active and more health-aware. I think that's really going to change things. I mean, AF's one lifestyle disease, diabetes is another one. These are very prevalent conditions. I think that's how we'll prevent it ultimately.
Emily, it's been great to meet you, and thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
No worries, Luke. Thank you.
As part of Atrial Fibrillation Awareness Week, Hearts for Heart is launching a new smartphone app. It's called Feel the Beat, where you can check your pulse and heart rate by putting your finger on the phone camera lens.
And of course, it's not a replacement for seeing your doctor, but while the mobile testing units aren't operating, it is a great standby, Joe. Welcome back. COVID-19 knocked the AFL on its head right at the start of the season. Games were put on hold for around 10 weeks before the league returned in a series of sped-up rounds now being played out of hubs right around the country, Joe. I have to say, the complexity of which the AFL have handled this situation and got the AFL season away has been quite incredible.
I agree. It does my head in, to be honest. Teams are hunkered down in Perth, Adelaide and Queensland and Das. We've seen some players breaking curfews with some harsh penalties. Lockdown isn't fun for anyone, and we are living it here in Melbourne, so we know that, right?
Yeah, it's been a challenge. You take players away from their families. Some have been lucky enough to get their partners and children with them in the hub, but they've been under more pressure and more scrutiny than they've ever been before in their lives. I think they would say lucky to still have their jobs and still have the competition going, but we know it's a pretty high-pressure environment on its best day, let alone when the coronavirus has put them into a situation we've never experienced before.
Yeah. The Saints are currently in a hub in Noosa. They're having a pretty good season on the ladder and their hub looks pretty comfortable too, I've got to say, Dart.
Could be worse places to hub than Noosa,
Yeah.
So I think they might have won the draw there, the Saints. And one core member of the Saints who's working to keep the guys mentally strong is a former Brisbane Lion and Kangaroos player turned team clinical psychologist, Dr. Ben Robbins, and here he is. Ben, good to catch up. We haven't seen you for a while.
Yeah, it's good on you, Luke. Thanks for having me, mate. And yeah, we're pretty lucky to be up here in Noosa at the moment while Melbourne's doing it really tough.
Can I ask you about your own playing days? Were you studying psychology through your career and where did that passion come from?
No, I didn't. I did bugger all during my footy career, to be honest. I got into psychology out of high school, but I didn't pursue it. I was trying to make me way as a footballer and put all my energy into that. And it wasn't until I was working at Toll Transport in a HR role after my footy career finished. And my boss was a organisational psychologist. And it was just really through, doing some of the work there that I sort of remembered my interest. There was a space for it in sport and one that I hadn't really explored as a player. I'd never really did any work at all with a psychologist, and I think I could have. There was a massive stress head and worry about how I was playing, and after games reviewing it, and I just felt like I could have used a bit more support. It was there, I just didn't take it up. So I started investigated the study and the pathways, and finished my PhD end of 2019, and started with the Saints around the same time. So. Good timing. We've had a fair bit go on this year.
Congratulations. It's a great story and a great effort. As you said, we both played in an era where if someone visited the psychologist, you almost thought, wow, he's in a world of trouble. Something bad's happened, as opposed to seeing you now embedded full-time with the club as a performance-based aid to try and make sure, how much better sense that makes. Can you tell us about what you're doing day-to-day to support St Kilda players and their psychological welfare and health?
Yeah, so the role I took up was head of mental health and wellbeing, and that is the primary focus. Obviously when I started, we had no idea that this was where the season was going to take us. But I think the Saints identified, as many other clubs have, that this is a space that has probably been under-resourced historically. We've touched on it. We've touched on performance psychology. I did as a player, but not to any sort of serious extent. So the Saints identified this was an area they wanted to put some resource into. It's really just checking in to see how everyone's tracking, understand, try to normalise their experience to our experience, have a bit of anxiety, a bit of worry, a bit of doubt, low mood. All of these things are pretty normal responses to what is a very unusual and sort of unprecedented event that everyone's going through.
But most people look at professional athletes, AFL players or NRL players and say, you're living the dream. You play sport for a living. Your worst day is sitting in a hub in Noosa and you play golf in your spare time. You hang out with your mates. How could there possibly be any stress? Can you just explain, what the anxiety levels are for players? What are the sort of things that, cause stress for sports people?
Yeah, so I guess there's two factors here. There's their on-field performance, which, to maintain your career, as you know, a long career, to maintain your contract, to keep your career, you have to perform at a really high level consistently. So there is a lot of anxiety that's attached to that. alongside that, there's all the, worries, fears, stresses, doubts that everyone else experiences too, whether it be in your relationship, in other aspects of life, whether they be financial or what am I going to do when my career finishes. I quite often talk about for an AFL player, you go straight into the system for the most part out of high school. You play footy for 10 years if you're lucky, and then at the age of sort of 28, 29, 30, when most of your peers or friends outside of footy are sort of really establishing careers or well established in their career, you need to work out what you're going to do. And that can be pretty confronting when all you have done is play footy.
I don't think people quite understand. You get feedback 360 days a year. People are always ready to criticise or praise, but it's just you feel like that intensity of living that professional sporting life. It's such a unique thing, and it's you've walked in those shoes, Ben, for many years. It's a hard thing to describe, isn't it?
It is, and I mean it's the reality of the profession. We all accept that, but also it is very unique and unusual. Like I said, I worked at Toll in a sort of a corporate role, and you'd have a performance review twice a year. Go in and talk to your boss about how you're going. I was like, oh, well, that's pretty easy compared to when you when you're playing a game, you're scrutinised as the game is happening by the supporters and the coaches, and often they weren't that happy with the way I was going. You do actually build some awesome skills that serve you well post-footy.
It's such a unique world now. They get off the ground to communicate with their friends. They've got to get on their phones, and people know they've got access to abuse them directly on their device 24 hours a day. What do you say to them? How do you handle it?
What we want to do is try and get them to take some perspective about what people are saying. When you're going really well, everyone's loving you. The supporters, people patting you on the back, and that's great, but try not to get too swept up with that, exactly as when you're not going as well as you'd like. Trying to get too attached to that, try and keep it as even as possible, and try not to get too caught up in what others external to those support networks might have to say. It is bloody easy for me to say that. It is much harder to actually do that in reality. What sort of practical things your players, the St Kilda Football Club, what do they do day to day to support their mental health? What we try to do is incorporate the wellbeing tools into the footy program as much as possible. Really what you're trying to achieve there is just remaining present when the world's trying to pull you in all different directions, back to the past, off into the future. And quite often those are negative places to go. Not always, but they can be. Anxiety provoking, create low mood, things like that. So our challenge is to just, as cliched as this sounds, one day at a time. Keeping our attention in the present. If I start thinking, geez, I'm here for another X amount of weeks, I'm not seeing my kids or my family or my friends for that amount of time, I can get pretty flat about that. Trying to keep our attention in the present, that's really what we're really trying to do with our players and staff as much as possible. It doesn't change the situation, nothing changes. It just helps us to manage it as well as possible. Well, this year's grand final will be a night game held at the Gabba on Saturday, October 24th. If you had said that at the start of the year, that's the first time the grand final has been played anywhere outside of Victoria. First ever night grand final, Joe, breaking new ground. It has been an incredible year, no doubt about it. And I'm embracing watching it at night in the Gabba. How amazing. I think it'll be beautiful. Your Magpies going to be playing? I really would love to say that they will, but let's see how we go. I love how emotionally attached you get to your side winning like all of us. Coming up, warm and blue sky days mean it's time to get sun smart. We look at the best weapons to fight melanoma. That's next on the House of Wellness. We Aussies are pretty well educated about looking after our skin and staying out of the hot summer sun, and we have to be, as unfortunately the serious skin cancer melanoma remains Australia's national cancer, Joe. Yeah, we have one of the highest melanoma rates in the world, and it's now the most common cancer affecting 15 to 39-year-olds. There is some good news, though. In recent years,
we've seen some breakthroughs in treatment.
The Melanoma Institute Australia is dedicated to the goal of reaching 0 deaths from melanoma this decade. And one of the best ways we can all help do that is to invest in a quality sunscreen.
So I grew up playing sort of sport whenever I was able to. So I'd be playing soccer, tennis, golf, anything outdoors where I could be kicking a ball or running around and playing with friends.
There was nothing that John Cook loved more than being outdoors. But 6 years ago, the 43-year-old was delivered a blow that changed his perspective on everything.
I noticed that on my forehead I had a mould, so I went to my GP. I got the results a couple of days later and he basically said, look, it's cancerous, and it was 1.2 millimetres deep. So then I got put onto a surgeon who then I had the operation of the primary and he took it out. I think it was a pretty big one. It was about a 6-hour operation. 5 years after my primary happened, I was actually in a work conference in LA, and you know, the week leading up to that, I was noticing a few things a little unusual, like I was slurring the odd word. My writing wasn't 100% sort of sharp and straight as it had been before. I went into emergency and had some tests done and had some scans done, and one of the doctors in the emergency came back to me and showed me a scan of my torso and you know, head and said, look, unfortunately you've got cancer all through you. I'm really sorry.
John was diagnosed with the most aggressive stage 4 melanoma and took a gamble to fly back to Australia for emergency brain surgery.
I had to sit my 2 kids down who were, you know, at the time were 6 and 9 and look them in the eyes and unfortunately tell them that Dad might die. Which is a conversation that you wouldn't wish upon anybody. And yeah, it was crushing for them, not for me. I mean, it was hard for me. I'll never have a harder conversation than that in my life.
One case of melanoma is diagnosed every 30 minutes and a person dies of melanoma every 5 hours. John's recovery was nothing short of a miracle, but he doesn't see it that way. He credits it all to the care from those around him and the support of the Melanoma Institute Australia.
The Melanoma Institute provided me with the immunotherapy, the treatment, the counsel. I'm here, I'm alive, and there's no way, I can absolutely guarantee there's no way I would be alive speaking to you now had I not taken immunotherapy and had I not had those operations initially.
Melanoma is the most deadly form of skin cancer. It represents about 2% of all skin cancers, but about 75% of the deaths. We often call it Australia's cancer because of our high rates, but it's Australians who are trying to solve it. So the Melanoma Institute Australia, we have a mission which is 0 deaths for melanoma. So we're the world's largest research, education and care facility for melanoma. I see our doctors every day spending their waking hours trying to not only treat patients who have the disease, but also researching it and constantly researching, looking for new innovations as to how we can come up with new treatments.
And another brand is helping to spread that message, providing a method of prevention and also contributing vital funds to the Melanoma Institute Australia.
The partnership we have with SunSense and Ego is fantastic. It's an Australian company, innovation, looking to improve the health of Australians, which is exactly what we do. It fits perfectly.
SunSense is proud to support the Melanoma Institute because they're reducing the risk of death from melanoma. Our SunSense sunscreens are formulated in Australia for Australians. We live in the sun every day, 12 months of the year. And so trying to provide that very best protection with the best Aussie science done here in Australia was our aim for SunSense and continues to be 30 years later. So from the 15th of September to the 24th of November, for every pack of SunSense sold in Australian pharmacy, we will donate $1 to the Melanoma Institute of Australia. And it's about enabling them to do more research so they can have better treatments to actually save lives. And we've seen that about Jonathan. It's just amazing, the treatments and the magic science that they're actually developing, which is fantastic.
It's very easy for people to sort of think, well, I don't have any issues today, so I'm never going to. This is a real situation, and it does happen, as opposed to sort of reading about somebody or some faceless person that you don't know and recognise. Basically, I've gone to hell and back, pretty much, but certainly I couldn't have done it without the people around me. And it's very easy now to discern the things that matter and don't matter, and getting value and getting enjoyment out of spending time with people close to you. There's just nothing more important.
Tell you what, I can't remember the last time as a family we spoke so much about wanting to get a break at the end of the year, Christmas holidays, just something to look forward to, Joe, after this pretty tough year. How about you?
I really haven't thought much past this weekend, to be honest. But you're right, Christmas to me is all about family, and I can't wait for us to gather as a big group, my sisters and their kids and, you know, all of us together. I can't wait for that.
Let's hope that happens, Joe. That's our show for today. Head to our website for more information and tune into the House of Wellness radio show with Joe and GQ every Sunday. Also, don't miss Joe and Emma Murray's podcast, The Best of You. What can we look forward to this week?
Well, we've been talking about acceptance. If you're really struggling with acceptance and what's going on in the world at the moment, it's a great podcast to help you with that. Just download it at podcastoneaustralia.com.au. It's called Best of You in the House of Wellness.
Yeah, the great interviews keep coming on that front, Joe. And thanks, as always, to our good friends at Chemist Warehouse. Until next time, stay well and stay safe.